Paul, we're back, and it's Sky Overhaul time, one of the most exciting times of the season. How are you? And did you enjoy the World Cup?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks, Fergi. Yeah, World Cup was good. I wish I'd had a rest from fantasy football, but I played Telegraph, Dream Team and Sky over that period as well, with varying degrees of success. So, yeah, all good, and glad to be back for the Premier League running.
Yeah, indeed. I didn't play any fantasy games, and I know that won't go down well. But personally, I do. I think looking ahead now, it's going to be madness for at least till the end of March when we have the next international break and onwards. So I really wanted to kind of have a bit of downtime and prepare myself for the coming few months, because it's going to be absolutely mental with double game weeks and and everything else, and I'm pretty non-stop now, but really enjoyed the World Cup. That final yesterday was absolutely insane. Probably, I think my favourite moment in football is still the Aguero moment. Obviously when they won the league, but that after 18 minutes yesterday, that final sort of 18 minutes and then extra time, I think is the most exciting passage of football I think I've ever seen. I've never seen teams in extra time go for it as much as they did. And when France had the shot saved and then they went at the other end and then they put the header wide, I was kind of on the ceiling. It was absolutely amazing. So yeah, really enjoyed. Disappointed with Wales, I've got to say. I think Wales have been a bit spoilt last 6 or 7 years. We've overachieved, I think, but back down to earth. But hey ho, and we move on. How are your early overhaul plans shaping up? Have you taken a look yet?
So I had a look before the World Cup tournament started, put a team in. I'd only made 4 changes to what my original team was anyway. So everyone was on Twitter, I say everyone, like looking on Twitter and people excited to make loads of changes and predicting like complete revamp of their teams. I made 4 changes. I made a few changes after the World Cup finished, and I'm still in the position where I've got 7 players, the same as what I had sitting in my team anyway. So yeah, but lots of transfers to pick up for single game days and fixture runs, fixture swings, extra games, etc. So I'm sure as we come into kind of January and February time, I'll get a bit more exciting.
Yeah, same. I've picked like a draft 11. I haven't spent very long on it. I haven't even really looked at the captaincies much because they seem to be, on the face of it, pretty straightforward to navigate through Christmas and January, as long as you've got, Man City player and Liverpool player, maybe a Spurs player, Fulham player. Not a lot else there really on the look of it. We will obviously look in more depth now, but I've made an 11, which reasonably pleased with at the moment. I imagine it would be incredibly template, but I think I've got 6 or 7 the same, and I've got maybe 4 or 5 players like Rashford and Almiron who I didn't have, and players like that. But yeah, overall looking okay.
Well, you're 500th overall, so I mean, is template a bad thing for you, knowing that you've got all the transfers to change it up as and when you need?
Absolutely not. I prefer it to be. I prefer it like this. When you're in front, or when you're having a good season, you want everything to be as template as possible, right? Because you can dictate them when you take the risks instead of having to take risks to catch up with others. So no, I do. I prefer it like that. I say it'll be template. I have no idea, obviously, because we haven't seen anyone's teams or the kind of ownership levels yet. But no, interesting stuff. Welcome to everyone who's joined us in the chat. Great to have you back with us. Geo Boys is in. Matt Sky FF. Julian Wardle says, great to have you back, lads. Shane White is in. Did Shane have a really good Sky World Cup? He won it. Won the whole thing. Oh, Shane, what a legend. Well done, Shane. Absolutely amazing. How much was that? Was it 10 grand? Well done, Shane. Absolutely quality stuff. Very, very well played. Sam D. Taylor is in, says he gets so excited for these. Matt Woolley, Johnny White, Kaiser Sose, and JMC. Johnny Belfast is in. Welcome to everyone. We hope you really enjoyed the World Cup and you're as excited as we are for the return of the Premier League game. Today, we're going to have a quick look back at the season so far with the top point scorers, top value players, the best bonus merchants, and average transfers remaining just for the World Cup before we look ahead to the coming month or so with Paul taking the lead on that. We also have masses of Twitter questions to get through. So let's get on with it. Firstly, a quick look at the top point scorers so far for the season. Unsurprisingly, Erling Haaland top with a quite ridiculous 146 points. 14 matches Man City have played, so it's an average of over 10 points per game. I don't even believe he started them all, is he? So pretty good going from the Norwegian. Harry Kane, 109 points. Quite surprising there, maybe. Since he's, I think by his standards, we probably thought he'd had a bit of a quiet one, but he's slowly returning every week, and he
scored in every game apart from the first game week, did he not?
Yeah. I think. So, yeah, he's not going badly. And if Haaland hadn't been in the game, we'd probably all be sticking him on a pedestal. But yeah, he's doing well. João Cancelo, Mr. Reliable, 93 points. Nick Pope, 91, 7.1 million. Really, really good price there. Ivan Toney, quite surprisingly for me anyway, 90 points in fifth. Really good performance by him. And Almiron, 89 points as well. Maddison, 87. Salah, only 87. Trossard, 86. We'll go down to De Bruyne, Saliba. Alexis McAllister, 86 points. Quite surprised me, I've got to be honest. I know he'd had a decent season, but to score more than 34. Foden and Jesus.
34 of those 86 are bonus points.
Well, that says a lot. That says a lot for him, don't it? I also like the look of Rodrigo in here. Scored 83 points. That did take me by surprise as well. And I had a look, and his XG per 90 on Fantasy Football Hub, he's got the 10th best XG out of the whole league per 90 when, obviously when he plays. So he 7.4 million. I think he could be, a decent shout later on. But what are your takeaways, Paul? Any surprises in there for you in the scorers?
A few surprises. Like we talked, we had a look at this before we went live, and Ivan Toney sitting in fifth. Even Almiron sitting at sixth. I know his form's good, but to be sixth overall, nothing to do with value, nothing to do with position. Sixth overall's incredibly impressive for him. And 7 million. Newcastle have the fixtures, sitting after Overhaul as well. So I imagine at 7 million, Almiron's going to be incredibly popular. Firmino surprised me. He's on the list, 8.5 million. I can imagine nobody's going to go, or not many people's going to go anywhere near him though, based on minutes to be played with Nunes, etc. But yeah, Trossard, and part of why he's there is that hat trick he scored against Liverpool as well, right?
Same as with Tony, he scored a hat trick, I think, didn't he? And
he got a double as well.
Yeah. And Firmino against Bournemouth. Did he get like 2 goals and 3 assists or something? But yeah, really, really good hauls. Really good hauls in there. Let's have a quick look at the player total points per game here. We should say this is off ffstuff.co.uk. And the best value player in the game. So this is for anyone who's played more than 8 games. Haaland top 0.98. We mentioned him a bit earlier. Rodrigo is the second best value player in the game at the moment in terms of points per game per million, 0.86, followed by Nick Pope, Wout Weiss, or less defender, who's had an absolute stormer towards the end. Almiron's in there as well, Mitrovic, Saliba, and McAllister, and Danny Ward too. Who jumps out for you there, Paul? Anyone?
Yeah, I like the Rodrigo shout, and he plays a single game day against Aston Villa as well. So I think it's he would obviously be higher on not necessarily on this chart, but on the first chart had he not got injured. And he's not an injury-prone player; it's just slightly with dislocated shoulders, like one of those things. I guess it's not a sign of a recurring injury or a player that's injured a lot. Regardless, it was just one of those kind of freak accidents. So. Yeah, I think he definitely is a standout. And Leeds' fixtures after, again, that was something you'd mentioned before we went on air, Leeds' fixtures after that single game day are really good as well. So definitely a shout there. And somebody I might not start with, but somebody I consider bringing in. Odegaard sitting on there as
Mm.
well. Arsenal's fixtures. I had seen some people on Twitter raving about Arsenal's fixtures and wanting an attacker in on all fantasy formats. I just we'll talk about the fixtures coming up. I just don't think that Arsenal's fixtures are perhaps as good, and without the focal point of having Gabriel Jesus injured, I'm not convinced that I'm going to go there. Martinelli still is only 8 million, and maybe that is something I would consider. Quite a few goalkeepers on here as well. We always know that the goalkeeper position's a good value position. I prefer goalkeeper transfers more than perhaps others do. So is there change to cover single game days by putting goalkeepers across, perhaps as a way to go. Danny Ward at 6.1 million, maybe that's even just a set and forget if you need the budget elsewhere in your team.
Just quickly on the first one, Salah was in the top point scorers. No Liverpool defenders, interestingly, and Salah is probably fair to say, I wouldn't say he's had a stinker, but he certainly hasn't hit the heights of previous seasons. But no Liverpool defenders in either of these charts so far, which is interesting. Let's have a quick look at the bonus points so far, and there are a couple of Liverpool players in here, but top so far. Rodri has got 36 bonus points, 33 of those being for passes, only 3 points for tackles so far, and by far and away the most rounded bonus point player. We touched him already, Alexis McAllister, obviously fresh from World Cup victory, 13 passes, 14 for tackles, and 7 for shots on target. Now, obviously, he's probably drunk as we speak now. Very much doubt he's going to be back for a week or two, which will obviously take us well into January. I had him in my team and I kept him in, and I was, obviously really pleased with how he did. I think you spotted him a week or two before I did, but you took him out, I think, didn't you? At some point, and I kept him in, I think. But He looks superb, doesn't he? And definitely something that he will likely be in many, many teams, because, come the new year. Just on World Cup stuff, just interested quickly on your thoughts around, players like, obviously McAllister is probably the most extreme example, but there will be players like Saliba and anyone else who play for France, Argentina, Croatia, or Morocco specifically, who will likely miss out. Saliba is an interesting one because he's obviously one of the best value players in the game, one of the top performers in the game. Didn't get a lot of minutes in the World Cup. What are your thoughts on going with these kind of players from the off, or do you think we should wait a few weeks?
So I think that you do probably have to split him and McAllister into two different brackets. Like there's a good chance that all the Argentine squad will go back to Argentina to celebrate, with parades, etc. And McAllister played a lot of football, and Saliba didn't, as you quite rightly mentioned. So if you look at the players that stayed at home and didn't go to the World Cup, most of them got a bit of a break at the start of the World Cup, like in the 4 or 5 days before they went back into training. Yeah. If he was to get a 4 or 5 day rest after the World Cup, because he's been doing the same training, like he's been training at the World Cup, like the others have been training at home. Can you see Saliba missing too many games? Perhaps one. I don't know. I think that we might see him. Arsenal do have players in reserve. Ben White can come into the middle for a game or two, and Tommy Asu, who has played pretty well for them this season when he has been called upon as well, could come in at right back. So they have definitely got cover, perhaps, and that would be enough for them for a game or two. But I wouldn't sway anyone against starting with Saliba unless we heard something that he was out for the first 2 or 3 games. He is on 4 bookings as well, so as potentially going to miss a game at some point in time. But then the longer he's out for, and by missing a few games at the start, might be a blessing for him to get over the hurdle for the 5 booking limit.
I think for me, we mentioned a few things already. You've already mentioned that Arsenal's fixtures are potentially not as great as you thought they might be. The fact that he has been away and will surely have some kind of break now, and the fact he's on 4 yellows, for me, I don't think I'm gonna start with Saliba personally.
Yeah, it's just, for me, it's just unless you've got value elsewhere. my intention is to start with 3 at the back,
Yeah.
and probably play 3-4-3. And for that reason, is there anyone around his value in defence that's got a really nice fixture run? I don't know. If City's got this tendency to players will play that you don't expect to play for like for a nice run of fixtures, like a Kanji before the break. And if I knew that he was going to play, then I know he's a little bit more expensive than Saliba, and then I'd maybe start with somebody like a Kanji. But the fact that we don't know that in City, and we're not likely to find out, because it feels like it's always a performance-based thing for City. Like once you're in and you're performing well, then you'll do well. Then you'll stay in the team. So, I wouldn't sway anyone away from starting with Saliba, but I'm leaning towards starting with him, but it's certainly not locked down for me.
If he does miss the game, which is on Boxing Day, which is 7 days away, which I personally think he will, his next 4 games after that would be away to Brighton, which will be a tough game, then home to Newcastle, then away to Tottenham, and then home to Man United. I just don't see the appeal. And he will likely he could get a yellow card in there as well, which means he'd miss a game. So I take your point, and in the team I'm playing at the moment, I've got about 1.5 million spare at the moment to maybe upgrade him to someone else, but I don't really see the appeal early doors in Arsenal. And I agree with you. I think the absence of Jesus, if you look at the personnel of Arsenal, the big differences from this year and last year and how they play, Jesus he leads from the front, right? And don't get me wrong, Arsenal have been absolutely sensational so far this season, but I think that Jesus is a massive, massive part of that. And I do wonder whether with these, the combination of the tough fixtures and Jesus not being there, whether Arsenal can keep up that, mental strength and performances week in, week out. It'll be, if they do, fair play to them, but I'm probably willing to gamble that they're not going to be as strong as they have been. But just going down the list on bonus points, David Raya for Brentford has picked up 33 saves bonus points, which is quite unbelievable, really. Van Dijk, 33 pass bonus. I've been trying to get Van Dijk in my team, but you can't have everyone, can you? Tyler Adams has got the most tackle bonus in the league so far, 23 tackle bonus points, 8 bonus passes. Now, he does miss the first game back through suspension, but he could be another Leeds player set and forget that you put in potentially in January.
He's second to Paulinho.
Oh, Paul, I just saw that, just as you said.
I'll let that slide. No, I won't let it slide. I just pulled you up live, didn't I?
No, you're right.
But yeah,
you're right.
But no, but I like Tyler Adams. Really, he's suspended for the first game, but he could again be an alternative to Rodrigo for that set and forget. If you want to make one transfer, cover that captaincy off, and then sit with him in your team for a while. If perhaps you started up front with Haaland, Kane, and Mitrovic, or some sort of combination like that, and you didn't want to take any of those 3 out, then Tyler Adams could be a shout. Again, picking him up on the game week before that, because he plays on the second round of fixtures there, so you can make a move onto Tyler Adams and then sit with him in there.
And just more of, another quite rounded player to call out, as well as Alexis McAllister, Yuri Tielemans for Leicester, quite a popular player, especially last season, I think. 13 points for passing, 10 for tackles, and 6 for shots on target. So he's the 7th highest scorer for bonus in the game, at a pretty decent price. 8.3 if Leicester are going to carry on. And as you say, big shout out for Paulinho, 24 tackle bonus, 6.6 million. I expect him to be incredibly popular at Overhaul too. Anything else on here, Paul, on this slide?
Lewis Dunk's got the 3rd most passing bonus in the game at 23, behind Van Dijk and Rodri. If the fixtures were a little bit nicer, I think that he could have been an alternative to Saliba, but if you look at Brighton's run, it sits at Southampton away, Arsenal, Everton, Liverpool, Leicester away.
Not the best.
Again, I'm not I'm not too sure, and he is a little bit more expensive than Saliba. So, but if he was going to pick up passing bonus in at least half of those games, is that enough to sway you? We always know he has a goal threat. Perhaps that's an option.
And quickly, just looking at the average remaining transfers before we start to look ahead. So this was taken the day before the World Cup. So you would guess it probably remained reasonably static. But top 5,000 average, 25.5 transfers. Top 1,000, 22.3. Top 100, 16.1. Top 10, 14.1. I'd probably expect now those top two to probably start slowly increasing as the fallers fall away, and and the better players start to occupy those positions there. Thoughts quickly, Paul, on the transfer count?
I would have thought that was low if we started with 40 transfers like normally, let alone 50. No, I think we'll see those that have stored some transfers back, regardless of what you believe the value of a transfer is. I think that like those engaged managers holding some back in reserve and slowly starting to climb into those positions. I agree with what you're saying. You will actually see those figures starting to increase. Probably, I would say into January time when there's a few fixture gains, a few 2 for nothings and 3 for nothings. Then I think that's maybe not the first couple of weeks back, but certainly into January.
And our kind of weekly reminder that Arsenal, Man City, United, Liverpool, Chelsea have only played 14 games so far this season. So they've got 24 left. So we are nowhere near the halfway mark of the season. We're more like just creeping over a third of the way. So long to go, and so many daisy chains and fixture runs to take advantage of. So I think one thing when I'm setting out my team is probably still not trying to be overly clever in terms of look at specific days so much, but it's more of look at the better players, look who've got more fixtures as a trend rather than trying to be too intricate. I still think that is too early for that, personally.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's look ahead, Paul, and we've got the fixture ticker for fantasyfootballhub.co.uk up now on the screen for the first six match weeks back. Chelsea up the top with some nice fixtures, including a double game week, and they've got the second highest amount of fixtures towards the end of January, which is really good. Even though they're a tough one still, aren't they? Because I don't think the Potter still knows his best formation, let alone his best team. What you thinking on Chelsea?
There's 3 Chelsea players that interest me, and four Chelsea players that interest me, but I don't think I'll start with any of them.
Wow, okay.
So Kepa, if we knew, but they played a friendly against Aston Villa on the 11th of December, and Bettinelli was in goals. So the third choice goalie was in goals. We know that Mendy was at the World Cup with Senegal, and we know that Kepa was injured in the lead up to the World Cup because Mendy came in. So I've ruled him out. Personally, I know Chelsea's got an extra game in there on others as well. Yeah. Chelsea, Man City, Fulham, and Spurs all have 7 games where the other teams have 6 in that space time in game weeks. So I've ruled him out. And another alternative to Saliba would be Chalobah. It looks like Potter likes him. Albeit I don't necessarily would say his performances individually were terrible before, but Chelsea didn't look great defensively before the break. So whether that means, again, to your point, like, is he going to change things up? Perhaps. Fofana is another one, but do we know what his injury status is? We might find out more on press conferences before the first game.
But even if he's fit, he's not going to play 3 games in 6 days, right?
Nah. No, but I still even think if he was playing 2/3 of the games, like with Chelsea's passing bonus potential, the volume of fixtures, maybe they'd be in a shout. They much prefer that anybody but Spurs to be on the first game that we'll see lineups, because Kane's going to play, right? We know regardless of breaks or anything, we know Richarlison's injured, and if you look at Spurs' fixtures, they look quite they're high on the fixture ticker, but I believe that they're only high on the fixture ticker because they've got the extra game, and therefore you get the extra kind of credits to get bumped up on that basis because you're going points per game and then 7 games rather than 6. Otherwise, if you take that extra game out, they would have been much, much lower down. So yeah, I wish Chelsea or another team where we had thoughts about who we were going to bring in, perhaps Man United, would have been the opening game. So Chalobah is a maybe for me. Fofana, due to his injuries prior to the World Cup, it's probably a no, but I had considered him. Kepa, it's probably a no for the same reason. And another one would be Reece James. He's been in training. I've seen some clips on Twitter of him, some decent strikes from in training drills. Again, he might not play every game, but he is more expensive, and I've got a tendency to not get on him at the right time either. So there is hop-on points. That Man City game, which is not an ideal game for hopping onto a player, but that comes just before the Fulham games and the single game days, so maybe we'll have a better idea then. That is only the 3rd game in, and Chelsea will have lost 2 of their good fixtures at that point, Bournemouth and Nottingham Forest. So yeah, it sways me to not having a Chelsea player, and if I need them for captaincy thereafter, hopefully if Fofana's playing again or Chalobah's kind of locked in that team, and I'll make the move then, I think.
Reece James hasn't had a double-digit haul in Sky all season. He's had 1 9-pointer, but other than that, it's been a series of 6s, 5s, 1s, and obviously a lot of 0s where he's been injured. He just doesn't. Chelsea, for me, just, I'm sure they will come good. I'm sure they'll have some good results, and I'm sure we'll be on them at some point in the season. But as you say, their first 2 fixtures back are pretty decent, actually. I think Bournemouth and Forest. But after that, City, Fulham, I think will cause them some issues there, and then they have Palace, and they have Liverpool, and then Fulham again. I don't think they're the best. So sometimes it's not just about quantity of fixtures, is it? It's quality, and maybe at the end of that little run, we'll get to see who their stars are and move on to them. But not for me yet. And I was on board with you because I think the Kepa has the potential to be an incredible Sky asset, but with the mixture of not sure about his fitness and the fixtures, I'm probably going to leave it because I think there are other options.
I was very, very close to getting Kepa in pre-World Cup, and they're running in Nottingham Forest not having a good fixture run, and then I was rewarded with for the first time ever playing Sky, I was rewarded with the person missing the target and getting the goalkeeper save points from him and a few other things. So, yeah, I'll count myself fortunate on that front.
Good stuff. We're going to talk on the next slide a bit more about Man City. We're going to have some very popular assets. Fulham's fixtures, as we know, a couple of really popular players. Palhinha has been brilliant, 6.6 million, will likely be in, I don't know, probably 80% plus, I would guess, of overhaul teams. And Mitrovic is probably another one. What's your thinking on Fulham?
Yeah, Palhinha is one of the first names. After Haaland's probably the second name on my team, sheet. It's like he's complete set and forget. He doesn't need the fixtures. The volume of fixtures help him rather than the quality of the fixtures, because to get tackling bonus, you pick that up against all teams rather than kind of shooting bonus or passing bonus where you're trying to predict against other teams. Again, Mitrovic will probably be in my team as well. The good thing about them both is that they cover potential captaincy days when, if you don't move on to a Chelsea player, etc., both of them can be used. I've used Palhinha 2 or 3 times for captaincy already this season, and he's rewarded me every time with at least tackle bonus. So yeah, those two. I don't. From Sky perspective, nobody else really stands out from a Fulham perspective other than those two, I think.
And we'll also touch on United a bit more in a second. Newcastle and Spurs are probably 2 interesting teams. Newcastle have won their last 5 league games. Look superb. I've currently got a couple in my draft. What are your thoughts on Newcastle?
Yeah, definitely. They've got a fantastic fixture run. I don't know if. Do you think out of the 6 games, do you think Wilson plays all 6 games? Like,
I don't know because Isaac is going to be back as well, and obviously the thing we know with Wilson is he can. Well, I firstly think he'll share a few minutes with Isaac. He's probably not capable of starting every game, and he will likely get injured at some point. But
yeah,
I think at his price point, I would just prefer Mitrovic just for the solidity of starts. He's got the same attributes as Wilson, penalties and stuff. And I personally think if you've got Almiron, a 7 million again, who will likely be, I would guess, an incredibly popular player, you've kind of got the Newcastle attack covered there anyway. So, not for me, Wilson, this time round, but obviously, really like him as a player.
what about Pope?
I think I prefer Trippier because of his, obviously he's got the attacking potential. Just because I think with Pope, I always prefer to go with premiums for keepers because you get that much more points. I know so far Pope has been outstanding, right? But I think if you look at the fixtures for, say, Edison for Man City, the volume and quality of fixtures for so long, for just 0.9 more, even if Newcastle goes slightly off the boil, we know what we know what City can do. We know what Edison can do. So I think I slightly prefer a premium keeper, and I think I would cover that defence with Trippier, who just continues to look unbelievable, and he's the kind of player, because I didn't own him, I was watching him out even more for when he returned, and every time he returned, it was like a punch in the stomach. I think even on the last game we just finished, or the one before that, there was a thing where he'd just gone off injured or something just for half time. And I was like, oh, come on, thank goodness for that. And then I think he came back on and then got an assist or something. So he went from like nothing to, I don't know, like a 13 point or something ridiculous like that. But that's my views. What's your thoughts on Newcastle at the back?
I wouldn't really like the double up. I think so. Trippier is one of those players that's probably not a traditionally great sky set, although because you're relying on clean sheets alone. Like, I know he does get the odd assist, but the way that he scores well in Dream Team and in FPL is because he takes corners, and as soon as it hits a Newcastle head, regardless if it's a shot or anything, like that ramps up his underlying bonus. And then if he keeps a clean sheet at the end, he's usually on for the 3 bonus. Where in Sky it's different, but over that course, that run of fixtures that he's picked up all sorts of bonus as well. There was a couple of passing bonus in there. I definitely wouldn't be expecting. I definitely wouldn't be expecting that going forward. There was a couple of tackle bonus in there as well. We do know he is on direct free kicks. I think his ownership's going to be top 1K ownership's probably going to be like 85% or something like that. And this is why doubling up with like at what point do you celebrate? Like I know at high positions you can tread water, and that's good because you can play the fixture gains further down or take advantage further down the road. But at what point do you want to really cheer a Newcastle clean sheet if you're sitting with one asset that's incredibly high owned? I mean, Pope's definitely in my top 3 options for keepers. So definitely something I'll consider. And they do have reasonably good fixtures.
And Spurs are probably the only, the next most notable got a double, even though it is against Arsenal and Man City. But I think Brentford, Villa, and Palace is a pretty decent start before it gets a bit harder there. Kane is obviously the player everyone looks at because of the price point, because of his goal record, because of his total points. Anyone else from Spurs? That's not for me at the moment.
I think if the fixtures were better, even like the double up with Son or something like that would have been something I'd consider with Richarlison being injured. But and I don't. If the fixtures were better, maybe Dyer would have been somebody that I would consider. But Bentancur is injured as well now, right? I think it's going to be a really, really tough few weeks for Spurs.
And then down the bottom of the ticker, however, their fixtures are not that bad. Their first 3. Arsenal have got West Ham, Brighton away, and Newcastle, we've already mentioned. Liverpool have got Villa away, Leicester and Brentford. Salah, Liverpool defence, Martinelli, Ramsdale. What's your thoughts on those 2 teams?
Yeah, I'm not as I know you had mentioned at the start that you were really keen on getting Van Dijk in. I'm more cool on the matter based on how good their fixtures are. I think I'm in the Salah only camp, and then there will be, like we always say this, there will come a point in time where the premium defence will start doing well, and people will move on to 4 or 5 at the back again. And I think that I'll use my transfers in hand to pick up those players and restructure my team then, rather than doing it from the off. So similar to Arsenal, I know I'd mentioned Saliba and Martinelli as both of my thoughts still. We spoke about Leeds, they're sitting at the bottom there, but when the move to that fixture game against West Ham, if you look at the 3 out of the next 4 on there are all blue, so West Ham, they do play Villa, but that's on a single game day, Brentford, and then Nottingham Forest, so that's a nice fixture run there. And the only other, I wouldn't even mention, I'm not necessarily mentioning as a team, but as a player, is Maddison from Leicester. They've got a mixture of really nice fixtures, some more difficult. He's in my thoughts without probably making it into my team as things stand.
So the only thing with Madison, so what I've done on my own screen here, I've just had a bit of a look forward at some of the fixtures, game week 21 to 26. These are FPL game weeks, right? And Leicester's fixtures, they start off all right, but then they go Brighton away to Villa, then Spurs, United, Arsenal. So I think long term their fixtures, or kind of medium term, sorry, their fixtures are quite tough. Whereas conversely, we touched on it a bit already, but Arsenal's fixtures after this tricky-ish opening go really, really good. They go United, Everton, Brentford, Man City in a double in FPL game week 23, then Villa, Leicester, and Bournemouth, and City as well. Leeds, just we mentioned earlier with Leeds, just at the time you want a Leeds captain, their medium-term fixtures turn really good as well, as do Brighton's as well. But Leicester's are kind of down the bottom. Spurs and Newcastle are quite tough there as well. So kind of cooling. But I think for me that'll be the point. I'll probably look to get back on Saliba and maybe look at someone like, I don't know, Martinelli or someone along those lines, is when those fixtures change, because I think there are earlier advantages to maybe jump on.
So I'll put you in the spot just now and see if you can come up with an answer to this, right?
Go on in.
So I know you'll start with I'm not preempting you trying to get in your head, right? But say Trippier and Cancelo's locks for you, right? I read so. Your diary this morning. I read your diary this morning as well on the Fantasy Football Hub diary this morning as well. So I know that this is what your team has set on the app. So so Trippier, Cancelo, right?
Yep.
And you're not going Saliba.
No.
And for the sake of this argument, this discussion point, you're not going to find the funds to go to Van Dijk. Who's your third defender? If I was put you on the spot just now, who would you put in that third defender spot?
So I think I wrote in the article actually. I haven't got it to hand, but I've got, with my current team setup, up to 9.1 million. So someone I'm looking at, actually, we haven't really talked about it yet, is Kyle Walker potentially. Volume of fixtures, good fixtures. Dallo was someone, I'm not sure of his injury status. I keep hearing he's done his hamstring, but then he's not flagged on any site either, but he may be one as well. Let me just have a quick look at some of the other players who
I'd said Brighton's fixtures weren't that great, and I know that people's fixture difficulty ratings might be different to the hubs.
Yeah.
Brighton's runs Southampton away, Arsenal at home, Everton away, Liverpool at home, Leicester away, Bournemouth at home. It is pretty mixed, but if Dunk's picking up the passing bonus at the rate he's picking up.
Feist for Leicester, maybe 7.6. He's another one.
Yep.
I think they're shorter term fixtures are pretty good. If I knew a Kanji was nailed, he would definitely be in it, but he's obviously not. Or there's other Newcastle defenders, right? So if you do go for Edison or Alisson or even Danny Ward ahead of Pope, you could go for Shah or someone else from there. I wouldn't want to triple up.
And the good thing with Newcastle is I don't know. Looking back, I should have checked this before. How strong they were playing like how strong teams they were putting out in the League Cup. But you'll see in Newcastle fixture before, so maybe Shard appears there, or if you fancy him over Botman.
Johnny White asks, is Kyle Walker a shout? And we don't know who the centre back pairing is going to be. I certainly think he is. I'll say that though. I think if you look at Man City's fixtures, I don't just mean their Premier League fixtures. I mean their overall fixtures. They've got so many games, and they've got 5 fit, top class central defenders to choose from. And as we know, I think we've seen, haven't we, that they can put Gomez at left back, put Cancelo at right back, even play John Stones at right back, put Ake at left back, Cancelo at right back. They can do all sorts. So I think that I'm not sure I'd go for Walker, just on the fact that I'm not sure he'll play enough of the matches. I think Cancelo and Ederson for me are the two I would go for City. But yeah, I haven't given an awful lot of thought yet to that third defender spot. I'd love to get Van Dijk in. I could maybe go Van Dijk. If I did Danny Ward instead of Ederson, for example, I could go for Van Dijk, or maybe a little shifty around somewhere else. But who's yours at the moment?
Saliba.
Saliba, not fit, on 4 yellows and crap fixtures for you.
Well, but that's part of the reason why I'm on Saliba for the argument, like for the conversation just made. I mean, none of those really are that enticing, right? I still, if you've got the money on top of it, I'd still probably favour Duncan that next spot. I think it is a bit of an upgrade. I think it's what Dunk's 7.9, so it is a bit more money to get there. But I like your shout on Faze, like without Faze. Again, Leicester's fixtures are mixed, but he does pick up passing bonus.
Maguire is potentially another one, just because of their short-term fixtures. While we touch on that, actually, let's have a look at Man United, because United's fixtures are pretty good, aren't they? And so they go. Man United go their first 3 back: home to Forest, away to Wolves, home to Bournemouth. Very, very decent. What's your thoughts on United?
Well, the thing on top of that is that there's a game day where you're likely going to captain them, and I'm going on the basis that Chelsea's so hard to predict. Like the games on the 27th are Chelsea play Bournemouth and Man United play Forest.
Yeah.
So I think most will likely go for a Man United player for that fixture. And for me, there's only 3 players that I would pick from. De Gea, and I probably won't go there. He's my third choice. And then Rashford and Bruno. I'm not going to say this is an original comment, because I have seen others make the argument on Twitter. No Ronaldo at Man United. Surely Bruno's going to step out. It's like written in the stars type setup. He's likely going to be on penalties. He'll take some set pieces as well. I had a look through his last few fixtures. He is picking up different kinds of bonus, like he did when he was like 99.9% on in the top 1,000 a couple of seasons back. So yeah, Rashford and Bruno, I think, are the 2 standout Man United options, and I wouldn't be messing around personally with Maguire, Dalot, Shaw. We don't even know who's going to be playing at the back. How much rest like Martinez is going to get before he comes back, because he's been integral in the way that they play. You can imagine Ten Hag wanting to get him back relatively quickly, albeit you want to respect the fact that they've won the World Cup and give him a bit of a break. But Casemiro's not, I don't think he's the tackle bonus or the passing bonus merchant that he's perhaps been made out to be as well. Yeah, like Bruno and Rashford are standout for me, and I just get so frustrated owning Rashford that I'm swaying towards Fernandes.
Do you really? Oh wow, I'm surprised at that.
One of those things that never ever work out for me, and And I don't think he's a particularly great footballer either. I think he gets by on a lot of attributes that can get you by as a professional footballer. Speed, acceleration. They can hit the ball pretty hard from free kicks. All his free kicks look like he's just lacing the ball rather than anything else. Maybe I'm doing a bit of disservice, but every time I watch him, I get frustrated. As an owner, I get frustrated. But yeah, between the two of them, I know, and there's a massive price difference between the two. So that's not to say I definitely won't go Rashford, because if I can use that additional money elsewhere for somebody instead of Saliba or somewhere else, then I might consider it. But there is so many good budget enablers this season as well. Like we've already talked about Almiron. I don't know, we're going to just fill us through into some of the conversations we've had already, and probably will continue to have. But you've got Almiron, you've got
Palhinha,
maybe
Tyler Adams.
If you don't start with McAllister, Tyler Adams, the third striker spot's really good with Mitrovic and Rodrigo we'd mentioned there.
Danny Ward at 6.1 if you're desperate for the keeper.
Yeah, Ali Kamara from Villa, so there's another option for that spot if you want to save a little bit of money. And you don't even need to start with them, because you could bring them in, because they get that extra fixture play on the Wednesday before is it the Wednesday? I think it is. Where are we? Aston Villa play Wolves on the Wednesday, the 4th of January, before the Friday, the 13th single game day. So again, there's options there, and therefore, do I need the money? Possibly not, and therefore might go Fernandes.
Let's have a look ahead to the single game days that are coming up in December and January, and how this may affect our selections. So the first one, Wednesday the 28th of December, Leeds and Man City. And it's probably also worth pointing out Thursday the 5th of January, Chelsea and Man City. Probably fair to say, Paul, that if Haaland is fit, he is going to be the perma cap. Probably not much point in going into depth on that. I would guess 95% plus in a top 1K ownership, which will close in on 100.
Even if you were chasing, I probably wouldn't go against them.
Same. Yeah, I absolutely agree. Monday the 2nd, Brentford against Liverpool is a single game day. We've already touched slightly on Liverpool. I do quite like the look of Darwin Núñez. He's cheaper than Salah, so Núñez is 10.5. He's more or less, I wouldn't say guaranteed to play, but he should play because Jota and Diaz are both injured. I looked at his XG so far this season per 90, and it's 0.97. Salah's is 0.58. But as we know with Salah, he just always seems to find a way, as he hasn't so far this season, being like the wherever he was 6th or 7th highest point scorer so far. And obviously you go back and look at Van Dijk. I would guess that players like Trent and Robertson are no longer really options at this point. And Brentford, you could be ballsy and go for Tony, because obviously he is performing incredibly well, and he looks just the kind of player who can go and bully that Liverpool defence and get a goal or two there. So what's your thoughts on that game, early doors?
For me personally, I'll be picking Salah. He's already, his ownerships went up over the World Cup, so I'm not suggesting that everybody's set their team now or even had a look at the games. We've still got up until Boxing Day, so still 7 days to rearrange our teams. But the fact that he hadn't been performing particularly great before the World Cup, his ownership's picked up over that period of time. So those that are setting up their teams are bringing them in. The argument against Núñez for me as well is that Haaland, set and forget, lock. Kane just mentioned 7 games in the 6-day period. He's second top point scorer in the game, and with some, like he's 16 points ahead of Cancelo, who's sitting in third. he's always, even if you're not going to captain him, he's always a good backup captain if perhaps you know that the player you're going to captain's out. And therefore you've got those two. If you have Nunes as your third striker spot, perhaps that's okay. But then there seems to be a lot of value in the third striker spot this season as well. Mitrovic, Tony, Rodrigo. It would have to be in that third spot for me if I was picking Nunes. The other one you'd already mentioned there would be Van Dijk that I would consider captaining over the two of them.
Look at Kane's points so far this season. He hasn't hauled once. 4, 7, 8, 11, 5, 9, 10, 9, 6, 10, 4, 9, 1, 7, 9. Talk about consistency. Absolutely unbelievable. And all adds up to that 109 points. The other one, so this next one's after the FA Cup, Thursday the 12th of January, Fulham against Chelsea. I would guess, and it's hard to know, right? Because if Fulham play their first two or three and they're a bit of a mess and Chelsea start off really well, it could be different. But Mitrovic and Palhinha will probably be quite popular captains, I would guess, against Chelsea, which is quite surprising.
Yeah, and what's interesting is that, and we'll go to the next slide in a second, but Fulham play the reverse as a single game day as well. So Fulham play Chelsea on 2 single game days. So Chelsea's actually on this 3 times. I'd mentioned before that's a fixture game on Thursday, the 5th of January. Yeah. So maybe there's if you've got an inkling of who, like perhaps Fofana's played the first 2 and he's played well, or Chalobah's played the first 2 and he's played really well, or Kepa's played the first 2 and he's played well, that perhaps there's an opportunity to jump on that player then and then move to the later week. The fact it's a fixture against Man City, the fact that it feels more of the last couple of years, and you're adding COVID to this, but it feels like the extra week's information on a non-Man City player, perhaps it's worth waiting the week to pick them up for a captaincy that you're going to play them in. Perhaps it's worth waiting regardless. But yeah, you're right. Palhinha, I would happily captain Palhinha over someone in the Chelsea team. It's probably better
It's better to captain him in a tough game because he's more likely to get the tackles, right? So Friday the 13th, Villa versus Leeds. We've touched a little bit on this already. Kamara from Villa, you said, could be good. Rodrigo, Tyler Adams potentially from Leeds, or just maybe skip it, right? If I don't think it's going to be massive ownership on any player from those teams. But what are your immediate thoughts?
Yeah, it's on Wednesday the 4th of January, which is the second match day in a group of fixtures, if you're looking for fixture games, that Villa and Leeds both have good fixtures on that day. So perhaps there's an opportunity. Martinez from Villa, I like the goalkeeper chain moves, moving on to Martinez there, and then you've got Villa at home to Leeds on that Friday that you've got captaincy covered for. He's a player you don't need to worry about rotation, etc. But similarly, Tyler Adams or Rodrigo. And it would all be about whether you've got a player that gets an injury or whether you get a player that's got a suspension. I think there's quite a few options available to do transfers out that means that you don't necessarily need to start with a Villa or a Leeds player. Yeah.
And in that period there, so Leeds fixtures go West Ham, Villa, Brentford, Forest, and then they got Man United and Everton as well. But in that period, they've got a 6-4 over Leicester and Man United, which with the captaincy would be a 7-4. Not that that's something to hang your hat on, but these are just the kind of things when you're daisy chaining, right? If Rashford's off the ball, United's fixtures are going a bit tough because in that period, United have got Man City and Arsenal. That just an example, you could think, oh, daisy chain off, then maybe even daisy chain someone back in again, but. These are things to kind of look for, right?
I've got something embarrassing to admit.
Go on.
So, watching the World Cup, I thought that the Rodrigo in the Brazil squad was Leeds' Rodrigo. And then when I realised it wasn't, like when I seen him, obviously, I know what Rodrigo looks like, seen him, knew it wasn't him, when I Googled him, and then I found out Rodrigo's Spanish as well. Yeah. So.
Brilliant. Good stuff. And the final few game days towards the back end of January, Man City and Spurs, very, very likely Haaland or it'll be Kane, Cancelo, whatever else. Monday the 23rd, Fulham and Spurs. We hope at that point that Spurs are doing all right, but Fulham again. This is like we can already see the trend, right? If you've got a Man City player, a Fulham player, a Tottenham player, and maybe a Chelsea player, you can cover off all these single game days, right? And then Chelsea and Fulham on Friday the 3rd of February. There are 2 other single game days in the middle of February, but again, they are Everton and Liverpool, so some really popular assets there. And the other one, Wednesday the 15th, is Arsenal and Man City. So again, some really popular assets there. So I suppose overall, in summary, Paul, the single game days are not too difficult to manage. There's only that Leeds and Villa game, really, which could prove a bit tough.
It's genuinely like, this might sound ridiculous, but it's almost like you don't need a plan. Like you can go and pick a combination of popular players that you think will score well. Exactly. Some that, like, maybe on your peripheral, pick like a few players that have got a nice fixture that you might not have considered before, like a Man United player, perhaps, is what sits around that. And I think that if you use your transfers wisely, and even if you picked up no injuries over that period of time, 1 or 2 transfers, you could navigate through that period pretty well.
And the only other one that we've got at the moment, Friday 24th of February, would be Fulham against Wolves. And we've just talked about Polina Mitrovic as well. So there's literally one game in the next 2.5 months, which will take us to, I think it's something like so game week 30. So that'll be the next nine game weeks worth where you don't have to really think about it. So I agree with you. I think that, and this is how I think I touched on it right at the start around building my team. You're not really having to look at, captaincies as such. You can afford to just look at who you think almost are going to score the most, who's the best enablers, who are the best premiums, who are the best, 8 million players, and almost just kind of take it from there, can't you?
One of the biggest quandaries I think that Sky Manager is going to have, and I've got it, and you seem to have it less so, is that what goalkeeper I'm going to start with.
Yeah. I think so you said your top 3 included Pope and
I didn't mention anybody else, but I think Ederson, Pope, and probably Ward, but for different reasons.
Yeah,
if I was I do want Fernandes over Rashford, and whether that comes to fruition or not based on how budget works and mixing it up, we might get some more information that we've not been privy to yet about who's going to start or who's going to be available or not available for Boxing Day prior to that. So I think for those reasons, those are my 3 options. But there's other. If someone told me they were starting Ramsdale, I think that's a fair shout. I think that Rhea, he just showed his point save and his fixtures are kind of mixed. Kepa, if you found out that Kepa was starting, you throw him back into the mix as well. So, and even Alisson, I know Liverpool's fixtures are as good that I would pick him over Ederson with him being at a similar price. But
I think Liverpool so far, they only kept, it's just some 3 clean sheets in 14 games, and he's still scored. I think it's 70 odd points with the saves bonus, whatever else. Speaking of Ederson and speaking of Man City, we're just gonna have a look now at Man City's fixture run from Boxing Day. Well, they actually don't play till the 28th. But all the way through to Saturday the 18th of February. So this is taken from ffstuff.co.uk. You can also use Ian Parrin's Sky Planner as well on fantasyfootballhub.co.uk, but it just shows the fixture count. And this was something that always jumps out at me, and it always seems to be the case for Man City in January. It kind of always does, but Man City played 10 times in this period, where other teams... Chelsea play 9, which is obviously, that's still decent. Arsenal play 9 as well. Liverpool play 8, but United and Leicester only play 7 times in this period. So it jumped out immediately.
There's 8 rounds of fixtures, and there's 3 extra fixtures, and City playing 2 of those extra 3 games against Arsenal and Spurs. So I think there was 1 or 2 questions about this, but also we knew it was coming up anyway, but City having extra games over this period of time, and what would do? Would you start with those players in? I had mentioned earlier on the pod that I think there's always like a person, like a player for City that ends up playing all the games. Remember Zinchenko? It happened with a couple of seasons ago when we went through that spell. And I don't know that I'm not going to wait and try and find out who that player is before doing it. And I think that there's a few options on when to get on the player. So you could just not start with player and play one game and then move on to the Leeds for the Leeds fixture when it's a single game day. I probably won't do that if I adopt that tactic. I probably won't do it then. They do then play Everton at home. That's on match day 1. Well, it's on match day 2, but it's on the Saturday of the fixtures. I probably won't do it then. The game against Chelsea, I am considering it, albeit there's a week's break after that, or just over a week's break. But every time that they play the extra fixture, like that Spurs game comes after around the fixtures as well. So even if you waited till the Spurs game on Thursday the 19th, you still get the 2 extra fixtures. So you get the 3 for 1 or the 4 for 2, or however you're looking for it over that expanded period of time. And that's why I was keen for you to show that visual, because I'm not going to force Man City players into my team, in my overhaul team, because of fixture volume for that reason. And I might use 1, 2, maybe even 3 transfers to load up on City players if I felt that at that point in time I was more confident of a player playing longer games. And I think that it's that Spurs game on Thursday the 19th that I would be tempted to do it if I was going to do it.
Yeah, I'm of similar thinking. You know, on that Thursday the 5th, Man City straight away have a 4 for 2 over Liverpool, 4 for 2 over Man United, over Spurs. You know, it's a real key period, and I agree with you. And this is why I'm thinking of going with the 3 Man City players at Overhaul who I think are most nailed, which are Ederson, Cancelo, and Haaland. So starting off with the 3. But obviously with an eye on this fixture stretch, right? As you say, you can use 2 or 3 transfers. You know, you can look at that lineup against Chelsea, and there's all sorts of players. I tell you, who might be interested in that at that point as well. It could even be Alvarez, because I think he's gonna break into the team before the season's out. I personally think, you know, World Cup winner, World Cup, you know, starter up front there. Obviously not going to start with him, right, because he's partying now. But, you know, Foden, De Bruyne, Rodri, and this is not even mentioning the centre-backs, right? If we get a nailed centre-back pairing at that point, any of Laporte, Stones, Akanji, Ake, or Ruben Dias, I couldn't even remember the 5th one, there's Walker maybe. But this is part of the reason why I want to start with Ederson, is because I think he's premium anyway. I think, you know, I think he and City are just fantastic and superb and everything else anyway. And I know I'm going to want him in this period anyway. And he's one of only 3, well, 4 if you count De Bruyne, you know, maybe 5 with Rodri, but it's why I want him early. So, yeah. But yeah, I agree with you. That Thursday the 5th, get to the lineups as well. We'll have a lot more kind of information on, you know, who's fit and who's starting and stuff. So yeah, I completely agree. What do you think Man City's effective ownership in terms of player volume will be in that, you know, in that period? I think the average number of players in the top 1K team will be at that point.
Well, it's interesting because there's a couple of players that we've not talked about. Rodri, but I'm thinking more Foden and De Bruyne. We've not mentioned De Bruyne once, like in the pod, I don't see where you'd fit him in, knowing that you need a Liverpool player for captaincy. Kane's volume of fixtures, I'm not sure where to fit him in. I think that making the move, like, are we talking on Thursday 19th, or are we talking at Overhaul, effective ownership player?
Maybe both. Go on, both.
Yeah, so starting off, I don't think it'll be that high. I think that some might go Walker as well, like you mentioned. I think it'll be under 3 at Overhaul time.
Okay. And what do you think when this run starts?
On the Spurs game on Thursday 19th, maybe it depends on how much we big up that run on the podcast. I'm not. I know that there's not a. I know the concentration of the overall game won't be high, and it'll be perhaps more engaged managers that listen to the podcast. I think that maybe 3.5, 4 City players at that point onwards.
Okay. I'm definitely thinking of like 5 or 6. I think at that point, I say that's the way I play. Right, is save the transfers back for these pylons, and then hope that the best team in the league do well for a period of time.
Yeah. The only concern I've got about it is that historically, when we were doing this on Man City teams, that they had a consolidated centre-back partnership that you felt, unless there was an injury or something like that, you could pick 4 of the Man City back 5, including the goalkeeper, and you knew that they would play 90% of games. And it feels like, to your earlier point, that it's only Cancelo and Ederson in that. And that's my reasoning behind it, not because it wouldn't be a good opportunity and people wouldn't do it normally.
And Cancelo's not going to play every game either, right? He will get an odd rest. So, couple of questions from the chat. Sam D. Taylor, thoughts on Kane post Overhaul? Apparently very down, plus a fairly tough run of fixtures. I think he's in my draft at the moment. Kane, Brentford, Villa. Those first 2 are pretty decent.
You're likely going to want to captain him on Sunday, the 1st of January.
A home to Villa as well. Chelsea and Forest, definitely be Spurs home to Villa. So I think he's in my team.
And you're probably going to want to captain him on I say you're probably going to want to captain him. I'm saying he's going to be the most popular captain these days on Wednesday, the 4th of January as well. So it'd be worth bearing that in mind if you weren't going to go for him.
And JMC, gun to your heads. One word answer, Paul. Rashford or Bruno?
Bruno.
I'll go for Rashford on that one. Yeah, so City are going to be hot on the menu in January. Let's have a look at this coming week's play then, this coming week or two. Firstly, Boxing Day. Brentford against Spurs, as you said earlier, Paul, gets you the kickoffs. Southampton, Brighton, Leicester, Newcastle, Everton, Wolves, Palace, Fulham, Villa, Liverpool, and then Arsenal, West Ham.
Who you captaining?
Yeah, I'm just looking now. Probably Salah with Kane as backup. I don't think Villa will have Martinez in goals. I doubt he'll be in goal for him. So probably Salah with Kane backup. You?
The opposite, I think.
You're gonna start with Kane, are you?
I think so. Okay. Just comfort blanket of seeing the.
See
not that I've got any thoughts, like any reason for Salah not to be playing, but perhaps that's what my current thinking is anyway.
Tuesday 27th, Chelsea, Bournemouth, Man United, and Forest. I think I will be going for Rashford at this point. Sounds like you may be going for Bruno or Rashford. You can't afford Bruno.
Yeah, that would be it. As I said, De Gea was maybe an option. I think if Man United, like if Varane and if Dalot didn't have these injury doubts and Varane and Martinez didn't get to the World Cup final, I think the appeal of De Gea's would be higher than what it is to me now. Like I had earmarked him as a potential pre-World Cup, and now I've taken him off the table. So for me, I'm not going to go for a Chelsea player. I think I'll see how those teams, how Potter sets up Chelsea over the next 2 or 3 games before thinking about even making a potential move. But yeah, Rashford or Bruno would be whoever I select in the overall team will be captain there.
As much as I don't rate him as a player, I am tempted by Maguire as that third spot, just for these first 3 games or so. Home to Forest, and then they've got, is it away to Wolves and home to Bournemouth or something? I think you get passing.
There's nothing particular. Yeah, they're not even particularly great for passing normally, I don't think. I don't know. I don't. Not for me anyway.
Wednesday 28th, Leeds and City. Very likely Erling Haaland will be our captains on that day. No point really touching on that for too much. Just to go into the following week as well. Just so everyone knows, Paul is away on holiday in this week, so we won't be podding during the second week, but I will do a couple of spaces on the deadline days. So I'll do one on, I think it's Friday the 30th of December is a deadline in it, and then I want to say Monday the 2nd is a deadline as well. So I'll do spaces on those 2 days.
I might join in the spaces. I'm just going up in the northwest-ish Scotland, so I'll be in a cottage with Wi-Fi and stuff.
Nice. West Ham and Brentford Friday the 30th, and Liverpool and Leicester. So probably Salah on this one, I would guess. Never forgetting Salah missing a penalty against Leicester in this fixture. Was it last season when Leicester were dreadful and
his ownership was so low at this point, and I still had him. I was so frustrated.
Oh, it's because there was this rumour about him going off to AFCON, wasn't there? That was it. But he didn't. He stayed. And so people saw I was the same as you. Absolute killer. I think Salah will be quite popular then. New Year's Eve, Wolves, Man United, Bournemouth, Palace, Fulham, Southampton, Man City, Everton, Newcastle, Leeds, Brighton, Arsenal. Haaland, home to Everton. Anything else there? Anything in terms of transfers potentially yet? Or would you not be hoping to be making any transfers at this point yet?
I would be it, but if you weren't going with Harry Kane to start with, which is fairly viable, then if you were going like Salah, if you were going to captain Salah or whoever you were going to captain on the first set of fixtures, then on the next day, Sunday the 1st of January, might be a time that you want to bring in Kane and captain him there if you were to start with someone else. I just don't know that any two for one type fixtures would appeal to me. And not taken, I don't think.
So on to Sunday, the 1st, Spurs and Villa, Forest and Chelsea. Kane will very likely be hot property there, you would guess, on that day. And then just the final.
Especially you can't see the Chelsea lineup as well. So if you're punting on Sunday at Overhaul like Shalba or someone that's got, or Mount even, you won't see the lineup, so you'd have to do it in the dark.
Monday the 2nd, Brentford against Liverpool. Probably Salah there. I do quite like Brentford's fit. That sounds stupid. They on paper they've got quite hard fixtures, but I do think that Tony's the kind of player in that kind of Mitrovic mould who can just do well against anyone. I know a lot of people have Mitrovic anyway, like as the third striker spot, but I quite like a Tony. I don't know. I think he's one to keep an eye on, and I know it's not like a massive outlandish pick, but
they have got hard fixtures, but they're hard defensively.
For the team, but not so much for him. Yeah, agree with that. Tuesday the 3rd, we get to the lineups for 3 games: Arsenal, Newcastle, Everton, Brighton, Leicester, Fulham, Man United, and Bournemouth. Interesting day this one. Top of my head, I would probably go for maybe Rashford on this one. I would think maybe Mitrovic. How about you, Paul? It's the toughest day, this one.
Yeah, I mean, if you did start with Maddison, it might be a nice fixture for him as well.
Yeah, it's a good shout.
But yeah, probably whoever my Man United asset is, I would probably pick myself for that day.
Wednesday the 4th, Southampton, Forest, Leeds, West Ham, Villa, Wolves, Palace, and Tottenham. Kane probably jumps out there, but we've already said this could be a good transfer opportunity to bring in a Leeds player or a Villa player on Wednesday the 4th. So just something to bear in mind that there as well. Anything else there, Paul, at all?
Don't think so. No, that's all good.
Then the final day, Chelsea, Man City, pretty easy. I think the majority of players will be on Haaland. But this is the day, or one of the days mentioned earlier, where it could be a good hop-on point to hop on to 2 or 3 extra City players, because this kicks off a 4-for-2 over most other teams, most of the big teams as well. And I believe, just looking back at it, Liverpool's 2 games in that 4-for-2 are away to Brighton and home to Chelsea. So it's not even like you're going to massively miss anyone there. 4 fixtures for City. Quite difficult fixtures, it's probably fair to say, but I fully expect City to really hit their stride soon. I don't think it matters who they play. I think they will be beating anyone. So they are the fixtures. And let's move on to the questions. Thank you to everyone who has sent in some questions. We've probably answered most of them, I would guess. Julian Wardle is asking about avoiding defence, and he's also asking about Rashford or Bruno. So Paul likes Bruno, I like Rashford. Don't think you like the United defence there, Paul. Not for you, no.
Dell was picking up tackle bonus and stuff like that before the end, and I think there was one pod, I don't know if it was the last one we done or the one before that, where someone was making an argument for Martinez. I don't know if you can just throw that argument out based on the fact that you might not be back in time regardless anyway, but I still didn't think that his stats were as good as what was perhaps being suggested either. I wouldn't be touching Man United defence personally.
I may be a bit hotter on you on Casemiro as well. I think especially for these first 3 games, I expect.
What about Fred?
What's that?
What about Fred?
You know how I love a United DM. No, tackles and passing. I expect him to do really well in these opening 3 games, and then you can either just move him on, or you can hold him. It could be he's absolutely smashing it. But I think, is he 7.6? I can't remember off the top of my head. But I like him, and he's 7.6. He's got 38 points so far this season. 11 points. Chelsea scored that late equaliser. He started off. It wasn't good when he started off, but he has finished on 7, 4, 3, 11, 2, 5, and 2. Not fantastic, but I don't think he needs to be sniffed at 7.6. DB asks about which United player we talked about them. Dalot, not traditionally. I think if he's fit, then Dalot could be quite decent. Personally, again, I don't really think you fancy him, Paul. United defence, no.
If you look at starting at Arsenal, 2 points, -4 points against City. Right, that could happen against any team. 2 points against Everton, 7 against Newcastle, 7 against Spurs, 2 against Chelsea, 9 against West Ham, -1 against Villa. He didn't play against Fulham in the last game, and he's picked up bonus once in that run of 8 starts. Not for me.
Not for you. Kelvin asks about load up on City from the start. So I think both of us are probably saying no, just because a lot of teams actually start off with a 3-2 over Man City. So City play Leeds and Everton, whereas Liverpool, Man United, Spurs, Leicester, Arsenal, Newcastle, a lot of big teams all play more than City to start off with, but there are plenty of hop-on points, right?
I'm definitely not against your Ederson shout as the goalkeeper at all, and probably the only reason why in my draft right at this moment in time I don't have him is because I'm starting with Fernandes. I have him in that itself. But if I go to Rashford, if I do go to Rashford or I want an upgrade on the goalie, then I probably would. So if you start with a lot of Man City players, I don't think that's a bad thing either. If, players that are going to play, you'd have to, in my head, you'd have to go De Bruyne, Rodri, Haaland, Cancelo, and Ederson. And I can see the thing about Walker, but Walker picks up passing bonus most games that he plays, and for the last 3 or 4 years, you would think that he's been the most prominent right back that they've got in most of the fixtures. He's never ever in the top 10 defenders at any season on Sky. And why is that? He's injured all the time, or he must go through spells where he doesn't play. We know he doesn't pick up any attacking returns. So I wouldn't be against picking more of City's players out of kind of that group. Maybe even throw Foden into that as well. But I think there's opportunities to hop on and use transfers wisely to get on players in City team that looked a bit more nailed in 2 or 3 weeks' time.
I think as well, maybe depends on your transfer count, right? If you've got north of 35 transfers, you can maybe afford to go for one or two earlier gambles and move on to City. Yeah. Whereas if you've got less than 25, say, you need to be a bit more frugal. So, but you're definitely going to want them in this period, right? I think that's safe to say. Between say the 5th of January and the 18th of February, they play 8 times. To other teams, sort of 5 and 6 and stuff like that. So yeah. Daniel Ratcliffe says Mo Salah or no Salah. I think we're both Mo Salah at the moment.
Just the games at Liverpool, the captaincy times that you'll pick him. It's going to be the most captain player. Both of us have had reasonably good starts to the season. So I wouldn't want, if I was picking players to go against to try and push it, it'd probably be outside of the main big captaincy days, I think. But certainly at this stage for me.
Yeah, and the fact as well, that if he does kick off, if he starts the first game back right through the middle, scores 2 or 3 goals, not only are you behind, but how are you going to get him in, right? Because you're going to have to immediately reshuffle your team to get him in, so it's just not worth it. So yeah, I agree. SkyFF Jake says Almiron or Trippier, who would you prefer to pick one? I think they're both in my draft at the moment. Who would you prefer out of the two?
I said this earlier, like if you take away the effective ownership, because I think Trippier's ownership will be higher than Almiron's, and I think it'll be pretty close to 100% in the top 1,000, or close to 100% within engaged managers playing anyway. I think that based on Trippier not being a traditional Sky type player, because he doesn't pick up bonus as much as others do, like pass and stuff like that. I think that Almiron's perhaps the better of the two shouts. But then I do factor in those other things as well, and it makes it more difficult. Both of them's going to be incredibly popular at the start. Incredibly popular.
If you had to pick one?
For my own team, if I had to pick one, I'd probably pick Trippier, but yeah, very close.
I think if I had to pick one, I'd probably go Trippier. But if I was going for Pope, I'd go for Almiron, if that makes sense.
On the lucky pick, Almiron.
Yeah, the lucky pick. FPL Foxy says, welcome back. Hope you both enjoyed the World Cup. How many and which transfers do you both have pencils in for the next 3 game weeks? Good question. I think at the moment, and like I say, we haven't got all the information yet, right? We're not 100% sure who's going to be starting and stuff, but at the moment, I think my first transfers will be probably Thursday, the 5th of January, when City play Chelsea at the start of this 4-for-2. But potentially Wednesday, the 4th of January, because I am tempted by Rodrigo or Tyler Adams on Wednesday the 4th to bring in to cover the captaincy for the following week as well. But I don't think I've got anything planned immediately over New Year. I don't think. Obviously, barring injury.
Yeah, unless I get any injuries, it would be the very first date that I would consider doing something, Wednesday the 4th of January. I've not got anything really penciled in. I'm not... Things the last 2 or 3 years in Sky, I don't know, COVID was a main contributor to that, but COVID's not been a big contributor this season, and we've seen disruption constantly in Premier League. I'm just not planning too far ahead. I've got main captaincies covered through what players I would have considered picking anyway, rather than picking that player. Maybe the Man United player is probably the one outside of that. So, yeah, I'd be pretty loose. I like Rodrigo. But if I lost a budget enabler through injury or something like that, then I definitely wouldn't be adverse to moving to
Adams or Kamara.
Kamara or Adams. Or even if I lost my goalkeeper, whoever I start with got injured, then moving to Martinez, I think would be a good shout then as well. So targeting a date rather than a specific transfer, and the date would be Wednesday the 4th of January.
Yeah, I think I'll likely make a transfer on that day, and I'll probably make maybe 2 or 3 for Man City to try and load up there. I think but that, like I say, it can all change, right? For reasons unknown, I'm not a fan of using transfers on goalkeepers. In your opinion, who is the best set and forget keeper? Currently got Pope with 1.2 million in the bank. Would you switch or go more expensive or keep Pope? Pope is probably my second choice, I think, after Ederson. How about you, Paul?
I would agree. Yeah, Ederson, Pope, and Ward. Based on the budget that you have available, they're my favourite players at the premium, the mid, and the low price points.
FPL Spartans says, great to have you back. Won't watch live, but here are some questions. Do you include value budget enablers that have been at the World Cup? So Saliba and McAllister. So for me, McAllister, absolutely not, but he will almost certainly be in my team sometime in January. Saliba, I am not, but I think Paul might be, despite all the signs saying not to. But I do. Not that I'm pushing any kind of narrative, right?
Oh yeah, your biggest sign in all of Sky Fantasy Football is hold on to your transfers, and you're like, oh well, I might get Saliba like down the line, and I'm not going to start with him. So
I'm not starting with him. 4 yellows. He's not going to play. 4 yellows. Tough fixtures. What's there to actually like? You may as well. Like I don't understand why. I know you're going to want him in. I get that at some point, but
I just gave you one reason to get him is that you're going to want him at some point in time.
Yeah, but in the meantime, you could have 2 or 3 games off someone else, and your value of a transfer. If you get a couple of clean sheets off someone else,
Tim Ream. Let's bring Tim Ream in from Fulham.
Tim Ream. Oh, Tim Ream. And he also asks, is now the time to be aggressive with transfers to cast a fixture against Man City over other teams? I personally like the Man City one. I do.
Yeah.
And we can, once the third round of the FA Cup is sorted as well, and the Carabao Cup semi-finals are sorted, that then shifts the fixtures all around again. So, and there's more fixtures to be planned in again. So I think the Man City one is a really good one, and then we will probably naturally daisy chain on to another one after that, I would guess. So
did you say Liverpool's played the same amount of games as City, 14?
I think Liverpool may have played one more. Let me just check. Liverpool have played 14, yeah.
Yeah, right. So they played 14 games. What we've discussed for a long period of time there is City playing 10 games and Liverpool playing 8. Liverpool played 22 at the end of this fixture run. They've got 16 games to arrange over that period of time, where there's going to be single game days, where there's going to be 3 for nuns. So I do like the City pile-on. We've talked about it on the pod, and I think that's good. But that's not the only opportunity that there's going to be with a big team with a big fixture swing. There's only certain teams that you're going to want to do these bulk transfers on a single team on fixture swings, and Liverpool will be one of those teams. And you could argue that Liverpool's team's more nailed, and that if you were doing like a block defence, like bringing Robertson, Trent, Van Dijk, Alisson in one move, that you could Nunez, whatever this looks like at that point in time, and what fixtures other players have got. But there's definitely going to be more than just this opportunity to really smash into a team on multiple transfers and get those benefits.
I remember I think it was 2 seasons ago, just before the second overhaul, Liverpool had like a 3 for 0 or 3 for 1, and people were piling on Henderson and Firmino and wherever else as well as that, and they really benefited. The only one I can think of in living memory which didn't really work out was the Chelsea one last season, where they had a bit like 4 for 1 maybe, and that didn't work out. But other than that, it generally does. And maybe it is a case of not just piling on a team, but piling in on an absolute premium team like Man City or Liverpool. You can maybe even potentially put Arsenal in that bracket now, the way they're playing. But yeah, it's a good point. And question 3: do you have a ranked target to aim for in the next 6 game weeks or so? I think mine personally would be, I'd be happy holding rank in all honesty, because I don't think I'm going to be like mega aggressive still. Just going to wait for the right opportunities. Yourself?
Yeah,
Old rank.
so before Christmas, I would like so before Christmas, before the World Cup, I wasn't even looking at my rank. I wasn't too bothered. I know I was doing okay. I know I was treading water, but I'd started off the season pretty well, and I've used amongst engaged managers maybe average transfers and that as well. So I've got the rank and a good starting point. Next 6 weeks to the end of January, I'm the same as you. If I was sat where I am just now, having used minimum transfers to get there, but if I do tear into Man City at one point, I would like to see a bit of growth and rank from that position. But would I be? I'm not too concerned. I think that outside of this, that there's going to be some pandemonium when those fixtures get rearranged on all the cup games and the European fixtures and how this all lies. There's going to be so many either pile-on opportunities for big teams or single game days where they might have a standout asset that you want to pick. Like if Brentford played Bournemouth, you might want to pick Tony and opportunities like that.
Yeah, I completely agree. I did have a point to make then, but I've forgotten it. But yeah, I completely agree there. John Maloney asks about Somerville, 6.3 million for Leeds. Has been playing recently and playing well. Covers the single captain early doors. Probably not for me, only because I don't think we need him, because we've got Palhinha, we've got that Saliba, Fofana, Botman, Shah sort of price point, Almiron price point there as well. But what do you think on Somerville?
Yeah, for those reasons that you've mentioned, I wouldn't go with him. I mean, if you're starting with from the off, is there any guarantee that he's going to is Bamford back fit? Because he's had a month to prepare, when the World Cup's been on, perhaps. I have liked him. I think he's looked good. He's only 6.3 as well, but yeah, for those reasons you mentioned, Palhinha is 100% a lock in my team. Some of the players that I'm considering getting aren't premiums that I'm rotating to get. It's Rodrigo, who's 7.4 million striker. It's McAllister, who is either 7.1 or 7.3, midfielder. The players that I'm targeting are all cheap players as well. So
crazy, isn't it?
And if I don't start with Saliba, he's 7.4 million defender. So there's quite a few there that makes me think that I don't need to have somebody at that price point. I don't think who isn't guaranteed to play the games and especially the games where I might need them most.
You look a bit like Alexis McAllister. You got some kind of comparison going on there. Yeah, and obviously because we've got these players, these amazing price points, right? You can have a midfield four, right, of Palhinha, Almiron, McAllister, and say Rodrigo. And I've probably missed someone obvious there, right? Or Tyler Adams.
He's a forward, but yeah.
Sorry, that's Tyler Adams. And this is why we can afford to have, right, Haaland, Kane, and Salah and Cancelo. So this is why I probably wouldn't go against the premiums, because you don't need to this season because of the bargains which we've got. We've answered Michael Harlan's question about Man City. We've answered Julian's question about McAllister and Saliba. I'm definitely waiting personally. Luke Notley says Danny Ward enables a very good team. Set and forget for him making transfers. I just think it's completely based on if you're really happy with your other 10, Luke, and you're like, and I can get Ward in, I'd probably go for it.
Yeah. So if you had Ward, this could allow you to have Rodri, more of those Man City players outside of that as well. So I could definitely see the argument for having Ward in goals and then having kind of four Man City players maybe on top of that.
Definitely.
Of the ones that we mentioned earlier on, I think.
Shahada Baby asks about Rodrigo, who we've mentioned already. Ian Parrin, with TV fixtures scheduled up until the start of March, although a few rearranged games could yet be slotted into Jan or Feb, how far ahead are you planning with your Sky FF team? I think we probably answered this, but I'm probably planning until Wednesday the 4th, or is it Wednesday or Tuesday the 4th and 5th? And then I probably look to make 2 or 3 transfers around that time, potentially for a Leeds and a couple of City players. Although I am always a little bit nervous because we have got the FA Cup break within that time, and I'm always a bit nervous about making a transfer before other games. But we'll see.
It's interesting because I talked about bringing Rodrigo in to make a fixture gain, but it would have been Mitrovic that I was taken out for him, and then Fulham play the extra game after that before Leeds play there. So yeah. I mean, do I want to lose Kane if I was doing that? But again, allowing us to be flexible. I had mentioned if one of my enablers got injured, maybe moving to Adams there, and that would feel more comfortable if I needed to make a move anyway. So, but I'm the same as you, Fergie. I think up until in the midweek, game week 22, I think it is in Sky. I'm not planning too far ahead, and I don't think we need to plan too far ahead. We went through all the single game days, etc. there as well.
There are a couple of teams where you could potentially even hop on and off for those Leeds games. You could even hop on and off Liverpool, Man United. The only thing is these are not forwards, right? So we are talking about Rodrigo now, a Leeds player. But if you're after midfielders, Liverpool don't play in that period, and neither do Leicester, Arsenal, Everton, Newcastle. So you effectively, with the captain, get a 3-for-0 there. Just something worth pointing out in that period there between January the 4th and January the 13th, when Leeds have those 2 games there. There is an effective 3-for-0 for quite a few teams there, if you're interested. Ben, Sky, if I ask about Walker, probably won't start with him. I think the fact that they've only got 2 games to other teams 3, but he is definitely in my mind for either Thursday the 5th of January or Thursday 19th of January when I do, if I do a pile onto Man City. But I don't think I'll start with Walker. I don't think you need to. And Ashley Tang just asks about Chelsea players. I think we said I haven't got any in my draft at the moment. So you don't know who's going to play is the problem, right? So starting off with them is really tough. But they do have some good fixtures, I would say, and they have a lot of fixtures as well. So if we quickly learn who their team is, who their best assets are, who can maybe hop on. Anything on Chelsea, Paul? Or all good?
I went through it at the start of the pod. The players I thought that I would maybe consider, but none of them are likely to make it in my team.
Superb. So I think, Paul, unless you've got anything else to add at all?
I want to do a section, I knew this was going to be a longer pod because I do want to do an analysis section on value in particular. I'd mentioned it on the podcast before, but the article Luke Wilson wrote for The Hub 2 or 3 years ago on a different way of thinking about value in teams, which I will do in a future pod. But yeah, outside of that, I think we've covered everything.
Lovely stuff. Thank you very much to FF Stuff for all the graphics. Thank you very much to Ian Parran as well for his planner. If you want to win at Fantasy Football, if you want to win at Sky Fantasy, go to fantasyfootballhub.co.uk, download Ian Parran's Sky Planner. It's absolutely fantastic. Thank you, Paul, for this marathon episode. We're an hour and 40. We haven't done one of them for a while, have we?
Didn't feel like it's been that long. I've not spoke to you in a while as well, so maybe it's
the company you're in, mate. That's all it is. It felt for me like we've gone on for 4 or 5 hours. So maybe, as you say, present company.
and that's Rich coming off the back of you doing a Telegraph podcast as well.
That was 2 hours 25. That one, but yeah. No, thank you, Paul. It's great to be back. Very, very, very excited for the start. Now, it's going to be a chaotic couple of months. That's for sure. And thank you for everyone watching live. Thanks to everyone in the comments. Thanks to everyone who will watch it back. Everyone listening back. Paul, where can people find you?
On Twitter at Paul McAnulty1, MCANULTY. And somebody asked me about the football badges in the background of my video on Twitter DM. They were my great granddad collected them from Esso garages in the early 1970s. So when you filled up, you got a badge. So it's the top teams in Britain, and he just collected a mag on framed when he passed away.
That is incredible. Wow, I didn't know. I've even slept in that room, and I didn't even think to ask. Apologies, Paul. My handle on Twitter is at @FFH_Fergi. Make sure you drop us both a follow. If you liked what you watched, please press the like button. It would be much, much appreciated. Remember to subscribe in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen if you haven't already. If you enjoyed your listen, please rate the podcast version. Pop on Apple Podcasts, leave us 5 stars, and leave us some comments. We'd really appreciate it. As I mentioned earlier, Paul is away next week, so we are likely going to do a couple of deadline streams. We'll do a deadline stream on I think it's the Friday the 30th, and then Monday the 2nd, I want to say. So we'll do, spaces, not streams, apologies, spaces on Twitter. So if you don't follow us on Twitter, at @FFH_Sky, make sure you do, and we will schedule them on there. We wish you all a very, very Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and most importantly, lots and lots of Sky FF points. Goodbye for now.